Hey guys, welcome back to the Becoming series, exploring the deep truths and the principles that will enable you become everything you were created to be. Now, last time we talked about what the power of ideas. Now, I want to sort of jump off on that and talk about the resultant effect of the ideas that you have come to believe. And what is that? It is your attitude. Now, most of us don't realize the connection between the ideas that we've come to collect and believe and our attitude. Now, simply put, our attitudes are the ultimate results of the ideas we have come to believe. Now, how does this work? You have to understand um, the hierarchy, right? All the way from how ideas come into your head to the end result of your attitude. Now it starts like this. When you are introduced to a new idea for the first time, that is called a precept. A precept. Now, a precept is a grammatical construct. It's made up of two words, sort of words, right? Pre, right? And pre means before. Sept is an old word that we don't use anymore, but it basically means idea or thought. So if you put those two together, you have pre meaning before, and then sept meaning thought. Before thought. In other words, the foundational thought, the thoughts that gave rise to the main idea. That is a precept. Now, when you take that precept into your consciousness, right, and you start to think about it, it now becomes unified. It becomes one, and that is now transformed from a precept to a concept, right? Remember that sept is the root word meaning idea or thought. Con is the prefix, which in this case means one. So when your foundational idea becomes one or becomes unified, it has now turned into a concept, right? When we talk about the concept of this, the concept of that, what we're essentially saying is that we had this foundational idea and it has become a unified thought. It is something that we can present. It is a concept, right? Now, when you start to meditate on that concept, you start to think about it more, you start to engage it, you start to develop it, it becomes transformed into an ideology. An ideology is something that you now start to live, right? When you hear the ideology of black nationalism, for instance, that is an idea that started as a precept, right, in someone's head, that was transferred to other people. It now became a unified thought or set of thoughts. It became a concept. Then it now transformed into an ideology. This was when people started to really manifest or really started to believe this idea. It became an ideology, right? But even at that point, right, it wouldn't have had the power that it would eventually have, because there's another step above ideology. When you believe the idea, the ideology, right, and you start to believe it and believe it to the extent that it really consumes your mind or consumes your thinking, it's no longer an ideology. It is now your philosophy. Now, philosophy is another word that is derived from the Greek root word, or two words actually, philo and osophy, right? Sept was Latin, but osophy is Greek. Osophy means idea or thoughts. Philo in Greek means love. So, what does philosophy mean? To be in love with your idea. Now, let's pause here for a minute. When you say you are in love with something or you're in love with someone, what springs to your mind? It means that you're really so passionate about this person or this thing, to the exclusion of almost anything else. That is how philosophy works. When you are enamored with your idea, right, or with this idea that you have taken on, with this ideology you've come to believe, and you just become so in love with it to the extent that nothing else seems to matter, it has now become your philosophy. It is now what you live. You can believe something without necessarily become transformed by it, right? You can believe something without necessarily becoming transformed by it. But when it gets to the point of being your philosophy, that is when your life begins to change because you are in love with this idea. Your philosophy now manifests as an attitude, right? So when you see people displaying all manner of attitudes, it didn't just start today. It didn't just start yesterday. It is a result of the philosophy that they have come to manifest, which was based on an ideology, which was based on a concept, which was based on a precept. At the foundation of your attitude, the attitude that you manifest, is an idea. So let's take an example. Hitler, right? We all remember Hitler, the guy who started or who popularized the Nazi party, right? Horrific people. They exterminated over 6 million Jews in the Holocaust. All of the things that Hitler sold to the German people, the people who followed him, was a philosophy. This philosophy was based on an ideology that the Nazis were supposed to be the preeminent race on the face of the earth. Right now, interestingly, he called the Nazis the Aryan race, Aryan. Now, if you go back to history, right, Aryan is actually from Latin, Arion. And guess who, or guess which culture perpetuated that idea of being the foremost people on the face of the earth? The ancient Romans. Remember that ancient Rome was a colossus. It conquered the entire earth or the entire known earth at that time, right? Ancient Rome was the global dominant empire. Now, when Hitler came into power, the idea that he sold the people was that they wanted to, or that he was going to develop something called the Third Reich, Reich, the Third Reich. In German, that means reign, the third reign. The third reign of what? The third reign of the Romans. Ancient Rome, right, that had started in antiquity, that was the first reign. Sometime in the Middle Ages, it rose to power again through the rise of the Catholic Church. That was the second reign. Now, he said that he was ordained by God himself, no less, right, to bring about the third reign of the Romans. He sold a philosophy. He sold an idea. He himself was in love with that idea. It was his philosophy, and he sold it to the people by constantly bombarding them with the ideas, with the concepts, with the ideology, to the extent that people started to adopt that philosophical mindset as well, and it gave rise to their attitudes. That is when they started to go about persecuting Jews. Nobody does anything to anybody without being controlled by an idea. This is so dangerous. This is so powerful. So it depends on what idea you have come to believe. That is what will manifest as your attitude. The attitude that you're displaying right now is a result of the ideas you have come to believe, the ideas that you have taken on, and the ideas that have manifested as your philosophy, whether you realize it or not. So if you're going to change your attitude, if you have determined that the attitude that you have manifested so far is not what you want, you need to go back all the way to the foundational idea and start with that. Now, next time we're going to deal with how exactly we're going to change all that. Stay tuned.